So this is a meetup that we will try to organize on a very regular basis. So I'm in Love with the Crypto is the name of the series. And for the first edition, we're super happy to receive Eric Larchevêque, CEO of Ledger. Big round of applause for him. So thank you, Eric, very much for being here tonight. So maybe my first question, like, who in the audience doesn't know what Ledger is doing? For you, we're going to explain what Ledger is doing.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Well, Ledger, we are a French startup, or now a scale-up, we should say. We are providing security solutions for crypto assets. So just to do a very quick pitch, when you own cryptocurrencies, what you really own are private keys, which are a critical piece of information. Whoever has access to this information controls the assets. And you need this information to sign transactions. So you need to have this information on a computer. If you keep these private keys on your PC, your Mac, your iPhone, it's just a question of time before it's going to get stolen, compromised. It will be the same thing that if you buy gold and you keep gold on your chimney. You can do it. Maybe some people are doing it, but it doesn't scale. So we are providing what we call a hardware wallet, which is a small device. Okay, I have one here. Well, it's too firmly attached to me here. So it looks like a USB key, but in fact, it is architectured around a secure element, the same chip that you will find in a smart card, like a chip and pin credit card, and it's going to keep your private key in isolation. The idea is that this critical piece of information will always stay offline, always keep inside the secure environment of the secure element, and you connect to your computer. On your computer, you have the interface. You say, OK, I want to make a payment. The device will sign the transaction. You will review on the device, and therefore, your private key will never be online. So it was a long introduction, but now you know everything about cryptocurrency security.
Perfect. So let's get back to the beginnings, because like last week and the week before, you announced like crazy milestones. So first one, like the biggest one, probably like 1 million units sold, which is insane. And then just to follow up with that, you then announced, hey, by the way, let's announce a $75 million fundraising. So it looks like everything's going pretty well.
Yes.
So let's get back to when it was not working well. So first, how did you start? Like it's made in Vierzon, as it says on the website. So really?
Yeah. How did the adventure start? So just my background, I'm an engineer in microelectronics, but I have always been an entrepreneur. I made my first company in '96, so I have done a few. And in 2013, I did a price comparison engine, which was named Prixing, just to compare prices in supermarkets. So we sold the product, not the company, but the product. So we had some money in the company, and so we had to find a new project. At this time, it was in 2013, I discovered Bitcoin. And I was struck by the technology. I spent a week reading everything I could about the blockchain, Bitcoin, the protocol, and I was sure that it was the fourth industrial revolution, that it would change everything in the same way as in '96. I have seen internet changing everything, and for me, I was sure I had to do something in the space. The only thing is, I had no idea of what to do, because it's like saying, okay, I will do a startup, in IT. You have so many things to do, and if you don't know exactly, well, you don't have an idea. So, we decided with Thomas, who was my co-founder at the time, to do something very horizontal. As we didn't know exactly what to do, we said, okay, let's do something that will place us into the ecosystem, and we will see what will happen. And so in 2014, we opened La Maison du Bitcoin, the House of Bitcoin, which is a physical space not far in the deuxième arrondissement, where the idea was just to be able to buy, sell Bitcoin, It was the only crypto at the time, and also have some information about blockchain technology, etc. It was just an idea for us to start to do something, to do some first meetups, to do hackathon. We didn't have any business model, because at the time selling crypto trading, it wasn't big enough to make any money. And so no one understood what we were doing. All the people who were entering the place were saying, are you funded by la mairie de Paris, by the city? What's your business model? We were just facing Numa, so they were thinking we were from Numa as well. So no one really understood what was the idea behind La Maison du Bitcoin. I think us neither. We didn't really have a plan. We were just hoping that something will happen, really. That was the pitch. And something did happen, because by doing all these meetups, the hackathons and everything, in fact, we have seen many different startups, many different people who are working in the field, and we have crossed the path of two specific startups. The first one was BT Chip, from Nicolas Bacca, who is now our CTO. And he was coming from the world of smart card, from secure chips. And he had been designing the first hardware wallet in the world, because he started in 2012. But it was extremely complex, impossible to use, even worse than what we are doing now, you know. And so it was very technical, but not usable in the real world. And there was another company named Chronocoin, who was from Vierzon, and I will come back to Vierzon later. Thanks. And they were working with Nicolas, with BT Chip, and they built the first product with their technology. What Chronocoin was doing was to sell Bitcoin through UPS. And to avoid chargebacks, because they were accepting a credit card, they were sending the Bitcoin through UPS with a verified signature, etc. So it was a way to sell cryptocurrencies and avoiding the biggest problem of the credit card, which is chargeback. And so they needed to have a media to send the Bitcoins. In the beginning, they were using USB keys with the private keys, but it wasn't very secure. It was sending cash. And so they started to work with BT Chip, having the first version of the hardware wallet. And I saw these two companies working together, moving fast, and we started to discuss, and we quickly shared the same vision that cryptocurrencies couldn't work without proper endpoint security. This was the end of 2014. They were looking to raise some funds, to do something, but basically we just sat in the same room, and in 2 hours we decided to merge our 3 startups to create Ledger. So end of 2014, and it went extremely well. You know, when you merge 3 companies with 3 CEOs who all have to find their places, easy. It's usually it doesn't work, or it's rare to work, but with Ledger, part of the magic is that it worked very well. And so we raised the first round.
So it was not a joke, it worked very well, everybody found his place immediately.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so we were able to raise the first round in early 2015 with Xange, and also Pascal Gauthier, who came as business angel, and Frédéric Potter from Netatmo. It wasn't easy to raise the round because no one understood about Bitcoin. No one wanted to invest into Bitcoin. It was really not something that the VCs really liked. But they placed a bet on the team because we had a good technology with the smart card industry. And just to conclude on Vierzon, because you asked me the question, in fact, I'm originally from Vierzon, from my father's family. So Vierzon is in Berry, in the center of France. It's nowhere, basically. And so it was very funny to find someone who was working in Bitcoin and who came from this city. And so when we merged, we kept the offices in Vierzon, which today makes even more sense because we have an industrial part with production, shipping, facilities, etc. But at the time, we decided to keep, and we were so proud of Vierzon that we put on all our packaging, Paris, Vierzon, San Francisco. And so it's very, at the beginning it was very funny, but now, you know, in Vierzon, for them it's the capital of the crypto world because we are maybe, we have 50 employees there, and it's a city where you do not find easily some jobs. So it's like a big thing, this Ledger thing. So yeah, now they want to be the crypto capital of the world, which is quite funny because it was a communist city, but now it looks like they are very crypto, you know.
Very cool. And so then how did it started? Like immediately units sold all over the world, right?
Well, not really. In fact, so we started really to launch our product in early 2015. We managed to do the first round, which has been very difficult. At some point, we thought that we would never manage to do it, but at the end, Xange and Cyril Bertrand, the partner, just decided, okay, let's do it. And so they led the round, and in extremis. And after, so we sent Thomas to San Francisco, because if you want to be a crypto company, you have to be in San Francisco, at least at the time. This is where all the action about crypto, about Bitcoin was happening. And I guess at the beginning, we were maybe selling a few units per day. It wasn't crazy. And for a while, in fact, we went into what we call the nuclear winter of crypto. Because just after raising the funds, Bitcoin wasn't very well, and it even tanked even lower. And in 2015, nothing really happened. And 2016 has been the worst year of all, because it was the year of the blockchain. You know, if everyone can remember, it was the year of like Bitcoin is dead, but the blockchain technology is so nice. You know, right. And so we had to adapt our business model to go into the world of POCs, working with banks, insurance, about things that does not make a lot of sense at the time. We weren't going, in fact, we were going nowhere because the sales of the devices wasn't going so good. It was a small, good business, but no traction, nothing. And this is at this time that we decided to do our Series A, because we were running out of money, just simply. And so we had to find some money.
So yeah, I heard some rumors about the Series A that it was not very easy to raise some money at that time.
Yeah, I think we have seen about 60 VCs, mostly in France and in Paris and in London. It was horrible because, in fact, we couldn't pitch about Bitcoin. We couldn't explain the hardware wallet, because if you speak about hardware wallet security for Bitcoin, they would say, okay, but Bitcoin is dead. Why do you speak about Bitcoin? So we say, okay, but we have the blockchain technology. And then we were explaining how the blockchain was going to change the world in 10 years, you know, with connected vehicles, buying electricity in the smart city. Which, why not? But the time to market wasn't there. So it was about maybe revenues in 5 years, 10 years. It wasn't very sexy, it was very hard. And so obviously no one wanted to invest. And we had, in fact, one VC, with a very specific VC, who believed into the technology, and let's say what they wanted to do is to have a front in the seat row to understand what was going. And it was not about making money, so it was Maïf Avenir. And so they really wanted to understand the blockchain technology, what we could do with insurance, banks, and so they led the round. It was a round of about 7 million euros, which helped us tremendously to save. It saved the company, but it was really on a blockchain vision. So at the end, we managed in extremis again to raise some money. And we closed the round in March 2017, and it was the beginning of what we could call the big change, where crypto started, you know, to move, and the price started a little bit to change, and also, of course, the sales of our products, for some reason, started, you know, to
ramp up.
Yeah, to ramp up, and instantly after we closed the round, or a few weeks after, the company completely changed, and all the blockchain revolution went to you know, to the garbage, and we focused on Bitcoin and and crypto maximalism because the market became real. And that's why, in fact, Maïf decided to sell the share from Ledger, because in fact we sold them something about the blockchain and blockchain for insurance, blockchain for banks, and 3 months after we were everything about Bitcoin, ICOs, crypto, and it wasn't very a good environment for Maif. And so they prefer to sell their shares, and that's why they went out of the... and so they did a nice profit.
They stayed only a couple of months.
Yeah, they stayed a couple of months, but for them they did also a very nice profit when they sold back the shares, because the management, we bought back the shares because we believed, of course, in the company. And it allowed us to change again the board and go directly into the crypto and hardware wallets.
So how did you manage? Because then it started like exploding. Like every time I was seeing Thomas, he was like, no, yeah, sales are good, it's going well. But like 1 million, like so you went from a couple a day to now 1 million. So it must have been crazy to manage. No?
Yes, it has been a real vertical takeoff. I remember when we were in Consensus, New York. It was in May of this year. I was seeing the sales, and I couldn't understand the numbers because I was like, what is going on? And also, usually when we do a trade show, we have some ledgers, some devices, and we sell them. And until now, we had, to really to ask the people, are you sure you want to buy? We really had to hustle them to pitch. And this time we had like 100 devices, a lot of people before the show when we were setting it up came, okay, can we buy? Can we buy? Okay, I wait. And so we announced that we will start to sell at 10 a.m. And there was like a lot of people. The first guy arrived, said, I take them all. I said, okay, something is happening. And we had to ration to say, no more than 2 per person. And it was completely crazy. It was unexpected. And we added also the support for Ripple. Ripple started to explode, and the NanoS was the only solution to keep your reload, the Ripple, the private keys with you. And very quickly, in fact, we did in 1 day in sales what we were doing in 1 month. And after what we were doing in 1 month, but only in the shipping fees. So it became completely crazy. We had a lot of difficulties to keep up with the production because we had to ramp up to multiply by 50 the production lines overnight because the demand from the market has been huge, and it came from 165 countries. And also we have a supply chain where we have about 32 weeks forecast. So it was very, very difficult. We have been in pre-orders during the summer, and then again, the price started to become crazy in the last months. And then it had been again completely crazy. We were selling tens of thousands of units per day. And resellers taking planes to come to see us, to plead to be able to buy 10,000, 20,000 units. It was completely insane.
I have an anecdote on this.
Yeah?
Like I live in the US, and I live in Connecticut in a town of 60,000 people, so it's not like New York. And so I ordered a second ledger for Thanksgiving, and the DHL guy came to my door, and so I was here, and he asked me, "Can I ask you a question?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "What is this thing? Like we've been delivering hundreds of those in the neighborhood lately, and so what is it?" And so I was completely blown away, because what are the chances that in this little town you have so many people ordering ledgers?
Yeah, no, it has really been crazy. The NanoS became the #1 consumer electronic devices in computers, which was unheard of. In fact, I think that most probably our device is the most successful consumer electronic product of the year. I mean, coming from nothing to something. And usually this kind of successes is quite rare, because we managed to create a new product into a new, different category.
And right now you have almost no competition. Like,
well, we do have some competition, because there are other companies like Trezor or KeepKey, but we have a very big competitive advantage, which is the use of secure chips. And they are using the same chips that you will find in a cooker or in a thermometer or anything, and we are using the same chips that you can find in chip in credit cards, SIM cards, passports. So at the end, it means a lot in how we can manage our technology and how we can scale the production. So I think that in the end, our product is vastly superior. And the other competition could be like Thales, Gemalto, Ouverture, which are like the big technological French giants, are extremely busy into mergers, acquisition, restructuration. So right now it's true that we have a very big runway in front of us.
And so now let's talk a little bit about the product in itself. So the product is very cool. The security is great. The first time, I don't know if how was your first experience with a ledger? It can be disorienting. And so first, like my first question would be like in terms of the crypto that you support. Because just to give you an idea of the number of ledgers sold, so 1 million, we estimate that Coinbase at 13 million users registered, so that's 7%. It's completely unheard of. So by default, when you add cryptos to a ledger, you make the market move. And we've heard that from fund managers, like having your crypto being added on ledger makes the market move. So how do you decide which crypto you add?
Well, first of all, we have stopped right now for the moment taking new crypto because we need to put like a new set of rules. Until now, in fact, we were invoicing 20,000 euros to onboard a cryptocurrency, just to set up all the infrastructure, etc., because it takes quite a time. And now, basically, it's not about the money because it doesn't change. 20,000 doesn't make any difference, but it's more about selecting the right cryptocurrencies because we want to make sure that we will accept only cryptos who already have mature market caps, a lot of exchanges who are not obvious scams like BitConnect, because it's our reputation, so we need to be careful. But also we have, I guess we have potential hundreds of cryptocurrencies who wants to get integrated into Ledger. Not speaking also about all the ERC20 tokens who want to have specific. So we have a lot of demand. But like many companies in the crypto space, we cannot face the demand. That's why first we need to hire like crazy. We are hiring like crazy. But we need to structure much more our company to be able to scale. We were, I think, 17 at the 1st January of last year. Now we are 90. So we had to scale a lot. And we have a minimum of 50 open positions. So we are hiring everyone. Everyone who is good. Because, yeah, we need to scale the company to be able to face all the demand, especially in support. Customer support, for instance, right now it's very difficult. So we need to scale because...
Customer support is in Vierzon?
It's both in Vierzon for shipping and also in Paris for tech.
Okay. And so then let's talk a little bit about the future. So obviously, like I guess the UX of Ledger is going to be revamped at some point, I hope?
Yeah, so we have a roadmap in 5 years, just to take even more, to see really what we want to do. So what we are doing now is to scale our operations to, not to be, but to continue to be the leader of security products for cryptocurrencies. We have sold 1 million in 2017. This year it is quite hard to do prediction because it can massively change depending on the price, but it could be anywhere between 3 to 6 million units. So very soon we will have millions of users who are using our devices, which is a combination of hardware, firmware, and app store. And the next step is to create more value on this ecosystem. So first, of course, we are going to revamp completely our Ledger Wallet applications. Now it's a Chrome app, which is a legacy product. We have been working for some months for a new application, which will be desktop and mobile, a native application, which will not require Chrome anymore, and which will have all the cryptocurrencies in only one interface. And also, which will also manage automatically installation and removal of apps. It means that if you have 25 cryptocurrencies, it will be completely dynamic and your device will just exchange all the cryptocurrencies applications, so you will not have to install, remove. So User experience will be much better. It will not be the catastrophic, let's say, do you want Segwit, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash that you can have where people don't understand anything. So we have a big button, I don't know, and they all click on that. So we fully understand that the user experience has become quite bad because all these changes that we had to implement quickly on the legacy products. So once we have scale operations and sold millions of devices, we want to create more value on the ecosystem through apps. And apps can be new cryptocurrencies, but they will also be decentralized exchanges. We believe a lot into the fact that these decentralized exchanges will enable direct swap between cryptocurrencies are going to represent a big part of the exchanges. And basically, you move all the security from the exchange to the end user. And that's why integrating natively a hardware wallet with the decentralized exchange is a very big win. And so we are working with all these protocols, Zeorix, EtherDelta, and others to make this a reality.
So do you have, like, for example, like some metrics? Because so far you could use it with EtherDelta, and now like Radar Relay just launched.
It's too soon to give some meaningful metrics. I think it's going to take a few weeks, few months before it is really more used. But we are very, let's say, optimistic and excited about this technology. So it's all about adding apps, adding governance apps as well. If today you have a hardware wallet, and let's say you have 100 Bitcoin on it, you are not going to take it with you on the street. Okay, it's in my pocket, but you are going to let it in the safe, because if you go out with 100 Bitcoin and you get mugged or you get drunk, you can spend your 100 Bitcoin. There is no limitation. If you have a credit card, you have governance. It's not a governance that you control, but it is still a governance. You can safely go out, and you cannot spend more than 3K or 10K. So we are going to introduce these governance aspects, which basically are oracles attached to your device. You will be able to create a new account, to pair this account with an external oracle, who will say, yes, I pay, or yes, I do not pay, with a set of rules, like rate limiters, or like no more than 10,000 euro equivalent per month, or it will require something else. So of course, if you have your 24 words and you recover on a new device, there will not be this governance, but at least on your device that you have, even if you get mugged, if you have a 3 days delay before signing, you are, even in a hostage situation, I mean, you are fine. So this kind of application will be the future of Ledger, because using secure devices, we can really do that.
And one question, because the thing is, now that I have my ledgers, I guess they will last forever, right? So what's my incentive? Like once you, let's say you take 100% of the market, which I hope you do. So what's the next step for Ledger? Because I have no incentive to buy a second one or third one, or...
Well, there are many different ways because to expand. First, the market itself is growing every day. So potentially, potentially there are hundreds of millions or billions of users who could need a hardware wallet. Maybe not like that, but different kind of hardware wallet. But inside the market itself, you do have some, let's say, incentives to buy a new one. Because first of all, a lot of the users wants to have 2 or 3. Because if you lose it, or if it gets destroyed, or if something happens, you may want to have another one ready on hand. Also, it's a small device, so unless you keep it in a safe where it can live for 20 years, 30 years, if you have it on you, you will lose it, something will happen, because it's a small little device, so it happens a lot, so you will rebuy. And also, we plan to have new generations.
Okay.
So it will not be this year, but we are going to announce, let's say, new version of the Nano S with Bluetooth, with extended capabilities. And the idea is that you will be able to use it with your iPhone, with your Mac, with your Android, without even connecting it. You will just have it on you, press buttons. The UX will be much better. And like the iPhone, you know, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. There are many things that we can do. And regarding the roadmap of our products, I think we can do very interesting things.
Okay. And you're also going after the enterprise market.
Yes. If you are a company and you are a hedge fund or a family office or even an enterprise and you have a lot of cryptocurrency, whatever they are, you could use an NOS, a hardware wallet, to secure, and some are doing that, but it's a single point of failure, because one device, one person. If you have, let's say, $100 million of value on your device, the question is, to whom do you give the device? To you? Who have access to the PIN code? Where do you put it? In the safe? It will be like having 100 million of golds, physical golds in a safe. How long before people with guns are going to come, take you hostage, do very bad things? So you need to have what we call governance. And that's why we are putting on the market what we call the Ledger Vault, which basically is using all our technology, hardware wallet, also HSM, which are secure servers, to build multi-signature, time locks, delayed opening, all the functionalities which are needed by professionals. And so if you want to make a payment, you will have to request 3 signatures from 3 officers. It's going to wait 48 hours. So even in hostage situation or bad situation, you still have control of your crypto.
Okay. So let's move now on the ecosystem, because so it looks like a lot of people are interested into crypto. So I guess you've traveled the world. How do you see France? How do you see Europe in this ecosystem? Like, where is the most vibrant ecosystem right now?
Well,
honestly,
crypto is global. So I think the most valuable ecosystem maybe is, well, it's hard to say, but a lot of things are happening in Asia because it's a very dynamic market. Japan, South Korea, even China, even with all the problems in China, with Hong Kong, many things are moving forward. So it's really everywhere. And basically, if you look at our sales, it's 1/3 Americas, 1/3 Europe, 1/3 Asia. So it's not like there is a big market which is bigger than the others.
It's a tight race.
So
it's a tight race so far.
Yes, it's a tight race, and we see that Asia is very dynamic. So I would say that, in fact, it's developing everywhere, and that's the beauty of crypto. It's that it is a truly global platform, and it doesn't matter where people are, basically, because everyone can contribute to the ecosystem.
In Africa, because you said Europe, Asia, what do you see things happening in Africa?
In Africa, so we are in hardware, so we distribute products. So in Africa, all the distribution networks are not extremely well developed, so it's also why we cannot sell easily. But we have some demand in Nigeria, for instance, South Africa, in some other countries. So it started little by little. There is a demand in all countries. Even in Iran, for instance, Pakistan. In Iran, we cannot sell because for obvious reasons. But all the countries basically are potential candidates for crypto and of course, our products.
And now, talking about the market in general, so everybody's pretty bullish right now. In 2018, they say, well, 2018, Bitcoin will reach 50,000, 100,000. What's your take?
Well, I won't do any prediction. Because it's not an easy game. I'm, of course, very optimistic about the state of the crypto in general, and Bitcoin, of course, in particular. What I know is that there is billions of dollars of Wall Street money and also billions of dollars of hedge funds in many different geographies who are just waiting to go into crypto. They cannot go into crypto right now because there is a lack of regulation, there is a lack of tools, there is a lack of systems to be able to invest. But if you think about it, cryptocurrency, crypto assets are the first assets, I think, in the world where the retail invested before the institutionals. Usually it's the other way around. Institutionals arrive, they take the lion's shares, and then the retail comes and gets scammed, you know? So
you said that.
So maybe it will be the other way around. And I'm pretty sure that there will be a massive influx of money from Wall Street in the months to come because they are ready, almost ready, and they have really a lot of money, and they really want to go all in.
And in terms of regulation, are you being consulted? Because how do you see regulation evolving, from optimistic to pessimistic?
So from the point of view of Ledger, we are not directly concerned by regulation because we are just a technical tool. We are like a tube, so we do not own the keys, we do not own the money, we don't have any fiduciary responsibility. So we are not very active into the regulation. However, through La Maison du Bitcoin, which is another company, of course, there are a lot of questions regarding regulations. And in France, we are seeing some movements. As you know, there is a Mr. Bitcoin. Yeah. So I think it's a good news because something is happening. Now, I remember in 2013, 2014, when we opened La Maison du Bitcoin, we tried to speak to the ACPR, to the AMF, all the regulators, and they just didn't care. They just say, okay, we see you as a bad news because it will be more money laundering, but we cannot do anything, so, okay, just launder your money, you know. So it was more or less the message that we got, which was a little bit insulting. But now, I think it's very different because maybe they always think, despite all the studies, that Bitcoin and crypto is about money laundering, but at least they have to take care of it, and they cannot ignore it to just say, well, it's just a bunch of crazy guys. Now it's real.
Aren't you afraid that the person that was appointed by the French government was like this, he signed this op-ed in the Financial Times in 2014 saying it was a tulip kind of things, and he was a former working at the Central Bank of France. You're not worried?
Well, they couldn't give, I think, the nomination to anyone else. They couldn't have taken like a crypto guy, or it would. So this is the process. You know, they have to take someone who is extremely, let's say, maybe pessimistic or cautious about crypto. I guess also he will have no other choice to really have a second look about what he has said about cryptocurrencies, because he cannot just say, okay, there are tulips, you know. It's not what he has to do. It will require from him, a lot of introspection and be able to think again about what is money, and being maybe able to accept that there is other forms of money. But I'm not necessarily completely pessimistic about what can happen. I think we can have good surprises.
Cool. So 3 small questions, and then we'll take questions from the audience. First one, what is your beloved crypto?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
The second one.
The second one. I would say Ethereum. I'm not a crypto crazy. I don't have so many time to look around, so I don't trade a lot. Okay. I don't trade, in fact.
So you don't know the price of Bitcoin as of now?
Well, it changed a lot. I think it's in dollars. It's about 10,642. But no, I have to keep a quick eye. But
okay. And just to finish, so what was your worst moment at Ledger so far? Like the moment you wanted to quit, if ever, if any?
Well, the worst moment. No, really, the worst moment is when I had to pitch the company as a blockchain company.
It hurt you.
Yeah, because I mean, I knew it wasn't total bullshit, because what we were pitching made sense about IoT, hardware oracles, devices, making contracts, but it was so far in the future that it was very hard to sell a story that people would back. And when we did our Series B, when we pitched the VC and asked them $75 million. In fact, it was the same pitch than our seed round, and really we did the pitch we always wanted to do from the beginning, and it worked. So that was maybe the best moment.
How long did it take between the first, like when you said, okay, now Series B and raising the money?
I think we started really to do it in September. Okay. It was about 4 months.
4 months.
Yeah.
And finally, what was the happiest moment you had?
I think it's when I realized that the crypto market, like it's happening. You know all this meme where it's happening. It was really happening. I couldn't believe. I just wanted. It was so crazy that at some point I just wanted to put in a corner, in fetal position, because it was really too much. Because when you sometimes you dream about what your company could be, about what could happen, never I dreamed that, because it was too much. And when it happened, I was like, I think for 2 months I barely slept, because it was so crazy, but I'm not the only one. I think everyone in the crypto during the summer was completely crazy, and also in November it was a crazy month, December, so yeah, I think it was really the craziest year for crypto ever.
Very cool.
We'll see this year.
So I have a personal bet. I think you'll become the next French crypto, like even higher, so I hope you succeed.
Thank you. Pascal Gauthier, who is now president of the company, Director General, is from Criteo, and he's saying that it's going to dwarf Criteo.
No, but Pascal is the...
So yes, he's very bullish about the company.
Pascal is the lucky guy. Like he did every single French success, Pascal Gauthier is in, so I think it's a good sign.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So if you have any questions, we take them. So okay, let's start from we'll go from the rows.
Hi, Eric. So congrats for the fundraising.
Thank you.
I have a question because you talked earlier about the fact that you can go outside with your ledger and make payments. Right now, what's the best strategy to make the cryptocurrencies being an element of our daily life? Is it by equipping the retail stores of systems that accept your ledgers in terms of mean of payments? Or is it by creating an intermediary system that provides you a credit card that connects to your wallet or something like that and make payments?
Well, first of all, we need to have a crypto which can act as a real, let's say, payment system. Bitcoin today, obviously, is not yet a payment system. So it's a little bit, I think, too soon. Of course, you could use maybe Bitcoin Cash or other cryptos. But we do have the technology to do NFC payments with point of sales, closed-looped payments in crypto. We try to work with big names in these companies, in this technology. But it's too soon. So I think to see the adoption, it's a little bit the chicken and egg. But before we see crypto in a day-to-day life where you can buy everything in crypto, I think first we need to scale cryptocurrencies in general. So I'm not going to enter in the debate of the block size, etc. But it's today it's too soon. So my prediction is that it's going at least to take a few years before we go to that, because right now, obviously, crypto is about reserve of value or speculations or censorship resistance, but not really day-to-day cash payments.
But you realize that you are the basis of the infrastructure of this future of mean of payments.
Yes, and we do have all the technology to deploy it. And maybe one day the fact that we deploy it maybe will help to go there, but it will not be on 2018.
Actually, I have questions. Like, don't you want to tokenize like some part of your equity so that we can participate in the success of Ledger?
So quickly on that, because all the VCs ask us why we didn't do an ICO. The ICO is the end of the road, because when you do an ICO, after it's over, you just have raised all the monies that you can use for your project. And what we want to do with Ledger is a big technological company, and we cannot achieve that through ICO. We have a few equity story again to do. However, if one day we are going to IPO, we may do a tokenizing, but it will not be an ICO. It will be much better than that, but it will maybe two years.
Okay, cool.
Thanks for your talk. One quick question about the Ledger technology. If I own Bitcoins on the Ledger, and I suppose your servers are synchronizing with the blockchain every seconds to maintain every transaction, what happens if your servers go down and my Bitcoins or my crypto assets are on the Ledger? How can I use them?
Yeah, so what you have on your Ledger device is the private key, which basically is the bearer bond of the cryptocurrencies. We are providing with an infrastructure to give you an access to your balance, accounts, transactions. If Ledger is wiped by atomic blast, then as long as you have your 24 hours, you will always be able to recover your crypto in any other wallet. So we are just providing a service, but we do not bear any fiduciary responsibility. So Ledger doesn't have any access to your money, and at any time you can get rid of ledger and keep your cryptocurrencies, which is a very important fact.
Okay, you've said things about your plans on integrating with decentralized exchanges, but as you've said yourself, that there are, as of today, a lot of problems with scalability and whatnot, so it might take a few years before we really are able to use these exchanges at par. So do you have any plans as far as integrating your technology with decentralized exchanges today, which take most of the volume?
Well, today the issue is that we cannot trade. You cannot trade Bitcoins that doesn't belong to the exchange. So we have been we could do that with the Vault, where basically we could issue a cryptographic proof that all the assets are, let's say, given to the exchange without moving them. But otherwise, with a device, you cannot do that because you cannot give the proof that you do not have access to the 24 words, and then you could just move them to another part. So like that, unfortunately, it's not possible. Many exchanges have asked us how you could just trade from your ledger, because they don't want to keep all the Bitcoin and the billions in value because it's only a cost and risk. But unfortunately, right now, there is no solutions to do that.
Hi, Eric. I'm one of those customers who, at a conference many, many years ago, got its first ledger for free, and now I'm an addict. I keep on trying. I need my next ledger all the time. So I got two questions as a customer. One is, when or do you have any plans to make it easier to store the 24-word seed? And the second is, are there thoughts around an integration with Lightning Network?
Yeah, so about the Lightning Network, we are working with a company with A5, who have a first integration of the Lightning Network, and they are working with the NanoS, with our devices. So we still have some work to do, but we plan to do a first publication when it will be ready. So yes, we are working with first implementation of the Lightning Network, and we will be among the first to propose an implementation with a hardware wallet. Regarding the security of the 24 words, which is very important, so there are two solutions on that. The first is that we are going to provide with CryptoSteel solution. So instead of writing on a paper, you will just put your 24 words on metal that cannot burn, that cannot get wet, etc. So you have a much better physical security. So we had the first batch of 1,000 units, but it got sold in one day. So we had to really to ramp up the production, and we hope to have some solutions in the coming months. And the second aspect is how we can really secure the seed, the 24 words, with governance and a plan for, let's say, eternity, in the sense of what happens if you die, what happens if something bad happens to you. So on that, we have a few internal projects with notaries or other institutions who will be the bearer of some parts of the backup. So we do have some plans to work on a real global solutions to be able to provide with backup and governance, because this is going to be one of the biggest problem or biggest question to come is how do you make sure that your crypto comes to your next of kin if you die or something bad happened to you. And this could be just one startup or few startups could work on that, because it's already a big question. It is going to be even bigger.
Hi, thank you for all the talk. It's really inspiring. I love your product, and I love Ledger because it's great for security. However, in terms of privacy, which is another aspect that is important to some Bitcoin users and cryptocurrency users, I'm curious how Ledger manages that, because as it is, if I'm correct, each time I use the app on my laptop, I query your server, so you can, in principle, know how much I have, my IP, and maybe part of my identity. So I'm curious how you manage that, and if you ever had encounters or requests from governments or entities talking to you about regulation, and how you can identify cryptocurrency holders.
So first of all, we do not track. what you said is true. We have an infrastructure, and basically you go through our servers to query the blockchain. So we could keep the Xpub, and we could do some statistics, etc. But we do not track anything. We do not have any logs. And part of our privacy policy and implementation of the infrastructure is also to demonstrate this fact, because we do not have anything to gain to keep information. We do not want to keep any information. We are certainly not required to keep any information. No one has asked ever any information. Maybe one day people will ask information, so it's better if we don't have any. And in any case, for the people who really want to make sure that nothing can go out, you will still have the possibility to use the device with your own infrastructure. We are going to provide, not now, but hopefully soon, in fact, possibility to deploy your own infrastructure in the cloud using packages with your own API, or to point on your own nodes. Or you can use solutions like Electrum or others, but it's only for Bitcoin. Privacy is very important. We understand that most of the crypto users want to have the best privacy, so we will provide with the tools to achieve that. And in any case, we do not keep any logs, because we do not need them. It does not make sense for us.
Hi, Eric again. What is in your view, good regulation, public regulation, that would make your business sustainable in the long run, between the two extremes that could happen, like really restrictive regulation that could make the market collapse, or on the other side, really ultra-liberal governments doing nothing, which could lead to higher prices and eventually be not good for your business in the long run, because the bubble will burst later or something?
So there is not an easy answer on that, because I'm not sure there is any good answers. What the regulator is really trying to do is to protect the public. That's really, so most of the regulator is afraid of crypto because it may burst, and after people will come to regulator and say, what have you done for me? You have done nothing, and it's not good for politics, it's not good for re-election. So this is the mission of the regulator. Today, I don't think that any regulator is afraid about Bitcoin destroying, the euro or the dollar. So it's not at all really what they are afraid of. It's about protection of the people, let's say. That's why you do not have any ETFs. That's why you do not have all these instruments to manipulate assets, crypto assets. So I think that regulation is important for that, and we will need regulation to be able to have an environment where you can create enterprise and you can develop the business. Because indeed, if you do not have any regulation at all, then banks don't work with startups, so you cannot create business. Taxation may be completely crazy, so people are going to move out. So we need some regulation. And then it has to be regulation based on logic, which is not all the time easy. And also today, I think the biggest hurdle regarding regulation is that no one can really put crypto assets in the right space. I mean, is it a tender? Is it some property, etc., etc.? So what I know is that we need some regulation. But what I know also, it's going to take time, a lot of time, and we will see how they are going to take it, especially that we have so many different geographies. I think we are going to speak about regulation for a while, because it's not an easy question. So I don't have a very intelligent answer to provide, but it's a tough subject. The positive thing is that we see some progress in the sense that now regulators are really having a look. And I mean, smart people are working on it. So yeah, find something is going to happen. When, I don't know, but.
Thank you for the presentation. I've seen that you were a great poker player, and congratulations for the biggest deal of your life.
Thank you.
And more seriously, I get a question about the Bitcoin and the market. Do you think that it's like an internet bubble burst in the 2000, that we are too much in advance to get to see big moves with the blockchain, And for now, you can't see any companies with a good blockchain products for the retail or the everyday life business. And we have to know the same correction as the 2000 to have a new how can I say, un marché plus sain qui pourrait permettre des healthy market. Thank you. Et des meilleures évolutions.
It's a good question, and we had the question, you know, when you asked to raise $75 million, they ask you, okay, is it a bubble? So, in fact, yeah, it may be a bubble because it's very difficult to say, but in the same time, it's a change of paradigm, and it's very difficult to see if all the variations, the up and downs, are really linked only to pure speculation and pure folly, pure craziness, or if it's related to something more profound. And all the VCs who are believing in Bitcoin, let's say in the technology, they're believing in the long term. We may see another nuclear winter of 1 year, 2 years, with going maybe to wipe out a part of the ecosystem. It's not impossible. Maybe it will be now. Maybe it will be in 2 or 3 years. It's impossible to tell. But what we all know, and I think what we all believe, is that it's a technology which is going to stay and that it's not going to get wiped out. So maybe we will see a correction, maybe not. Again, I don't have an intelligent answer to make. But it's something that we have all accepted, that maybe we will see the correction, or maybe the bubble has burst in 2013 already, you know. So it's very hard to say.
Last question.
Hello. I have one question before I hand you my resume, which is, as your company is all about security, I'm not sure it's relevant, but how do you think about the evolutions into quantum computers and everything, how it could affect security?
Well, quantum computing is going to affect some parts of the cryptography, but it is not going to affect, from what I know, I'm not an expert in quantum computing, but it's not going to affect all the cryptography related to Bitcoin, because it has multiple hash and the elliptic curves are not really, let's say, I think, sensitive to what we are developing right now. So if one day, I mean, what we are looking for when we are doing security, it's more about fault injections, observation of the chips and all IT vulnerabilities, etc. Quantum computing is something that could affect everything and nothing. And if one day we think that quantum computing is going to destroy the cryptography as we know it, we will move to quantum-resistant cryptography. Such things exist, but it's not affecting us in the short term or even in the long term. So I don't think that everyone, there are many things who can be a problem for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. I don't think that quantum computing is one.
So will you take his resume?
I'll take the resume after.
Eric, thank you so much
for
being here tonight.